From AccuWeather.com, this is AccuWeather Daily, a brief host-read article. It's weather news in a nutshell. Rafael is forecast to strengthen into the next hurricane of the season and track into the Gulf of Mexico and make landfall in the United States this coming weekend. AccuWeather has been monitoring the threat since the middle of October, well before the National Hurricane Center issued potential development alerts. Hurricane experts designated a tropical rainstorm Saturday to further raise public awareness of the situation's potential seriousness. AccuWeather Chief On-Air Meteorologist Bernie Rayno said that steering breezes will guide the tropical storm on a northwesterly track that takes it across Cuba today. In this zone, waters are sufficiently warm and disruptive breezes and wind shear will be low. As the storm moves northward through the middle of the week and gains wind intensity, heavy flooding rain and damaging winds are expected across Jamaica and Cuba. There will be the likelihood of flash flooding and mudslides. The AccuWeather Real Impact Scale for hurricanes is a 1 for Jamaica and 2 for Cuba. The Real Impact Scale considers the magnitude of rainfall, storm surge, mudslides, flooding, and wind, as well as the economic impacts on populated areas. The tropical threat will spend some time as a Category 1 or possibly a Category 2 hurricane before losing some wind intensity while approaching the U.S. Central Gulf Coast this weekend due to progressively cooler waters and increasing wind shear. The real impact for the U.S. is a 1. The storm will be large enough and strong enough to create rough seas over the Gulf of Mexico, building surf and triggering beach erosion along shores. Some coastal flooding is likely to the north and east of the storm track, where winds will push Gulf waters shoreward. The highest probability of landfall is along the central Louisiana coast. However, since steering breezes may change a bit late this week and this weekend due to the approach of a non-tropical storm from the south-central U.S., there is a wide window as to where landfall will occur. That landfall potential zone extends from the Florida Panhandle to the Texas coast. Other scenarios take a much weaker tropical feature much farther to the west toward Mexico versus the U.S. In that case, impacts on the U.S. could be minimal, and Rafael could succumb to wind shear. A stronger hurricane may also tend to track more to the east rather than north. In that case, impacts would be greater along the Florida Gulf Coast, including from storm surge. In yet another scenario, the feature may lose so much wind intensity that it arrives in the U.S. as a tropical depression or just a wind and rainstorm. Regardless, this will not be a situation where there is a strengthening major hurricane that makes landfall in the U.S., but rather something less intense in terms of wind intensity. Impacts from rainfall can still be experienced well inland. Dangerous and damaging effects will extend outward from the storm center, especially on the eastern side. You should not just focus on the eye path, but rather on AccuWeather's forecast impact zones, which its team of dozens of meteorologists will heavily scrutinize throughout the storm's life cycle. Together with the non-tropical storm, Rafael will spread a zone of drenching rain and locally severe thunderstorms over parts of the interior south-central and southeastern states as it moves inland. Heavy rainfall is forecast to precede any direct rain from Rafael and may prime the dry landscape enough to trigger flooding more easily than if the new tropical storm were to move over the region by itself. A similar, yet more extreme condition was present during Helene. In the case of pre-Rafael impacts, the heaviest rain is likely to fall on coastal areas of Georgia and South Carolina. Regardless, enough rain could fall on the southern Appalachians and parts of the southeast states to cause flooding and other issues. Even though the ground has become dry in recent weeks post-Helene, it may not take as much rain to trigger issues in the region, especially where drainage, infrastructure, and roads have not been fully repaired since Hurricane Helene. A damaged tree canopy post-Helene may also lead to greater and faster runoff in some instances. Any tropical storm or hurricane that transitions to a tropical rainstorm has the potential for excessive rainfall and flooding. While the magnitude of flooding that occurred over the southern Appalachians from Helene is unlikely to occur in the same area with Rafael, any location where rain concentrates and falls at a heavy rate for multiple hours could be at risk for significant urban flooding and flooding along small streams. Aside from the risk of flash flooding, which may be focused on a small area, the storm may bring much-needed rain and wildfire relief over a broad zone later this weekend into next week. In some cases, the storm duo may bring the first soaking rain in months to parts of the central and eastern states. That's all for now. You can get the latest on Rafael along with more stories and regional forecasts at AccuWeather.com. And for your local forecast at your fingertips, including a hurricane tracker, download the AccuWeather app. Enjoy the rest of your day, be safe, and I'll be back tomorrow with more from AccuWeather.